because this is honestly my favorite question. So many people talk to, they'll say like, oh yeah, I tried meditating, it doesn't work for me. And I'm like, no, actually, like, it absolutely does work for you. I promise it worked for you. It was working for you, and it will continue to work for you. Meditation isn't like something, it's not like getting on a horse and riding a horse where you like get on and you're just going to gallop into the sunset and instantly know everything.
Right.
It's a practice. It's a practice. And so the whole idea of meditating is being able to quiet your mind. The definition of meditation is becoming aware with oneself. So the whole point, the whole principle, the whole idea behind it is to become aware of yourself, becoming like keenly aware of every single emotion that runs through your body, really tuning in to every single thought that passes through your mind. Think about it. If we have, on average, each person has 60 to 70,000 thoughts that they think every single day.
It's insane.
And 90% of those thoughts are all negative. It's wild. So we can get into like a whole conversation about self-talk and how like destructive that is. But before we go there, and then the other fact is that 90% of the thoughts that we think today, we will think tomorrow. And 90% of the thoughts that we thought yesterday, we'll think today, and then 90 more. And then essentially, we're thinking the same 60,000 thoughts every single day. Wow. And 90% of those thoughts are all negative.
Right.
So if we know that our thoughts create our reality, and we know that 90% of them are negative, what kind of reality are we creating, right?
Right.
We're either default creators or deliberate creators. And probably 98% of people are default creators, where they're simply observing external circumstances or things outside of themselves, and they're allowing what they see dictate how they feel, and therefore they're giving their power away. So when you become a deliberate creator, that means that you're training your focus, and that way you only focus on the good, you only see the good, you only choose to see the good or talk about the good or have positive conversations. You're not engaging in things like gossip or belittling other people or complaining. Complaining is like a virus. Anytime that you're complaining or speaking about things that don't uplift and inspire and delight you, you're essentially doing yourself a disservice. Because what you talk about and what you think about, you bring about, you attract to you. Right. So the cool thing about meditation is that you're quieting your mind, and it's allowing you to become aware of how you're feeling and what you're thinking. And so I always recommend people to start off with something not a huge commitment. I would never tell anybody like, oh yeah, you're going to sit in silence for 1 hour every single morning. Like I mean, like, I do that because I enjoy it, but that's not going to sound fun to a lot of people. That's going to sound miserable. And so I want to, and there's so many different meditations that you can do. There's guided meditations, there's abundance meditations, there's breath work, like breathing meditations, there's mantra meditations where you might say like or But again, all of what that's doing is, instead of your mind wandering here and there and thinking about like, oh, I gotta go grocery shopping, and then I gotta go to the bank, and then I gotta send in that report to my boss, and then I gotta do this, and then I gotta do that, and I gotta get an oil change, and oh my God, I forgot I have this problem, blah, blah, blah. So like, instead of our mind just running around like it always does and it always will, right? Meditation is allowing us to train our mind, and it's all about discipline, right? And that's why like cold showers every single morning are going to fall right in that same category of discipline. You say do it, and you do it. Right. You don't allow for anything. And so same thing when you're meditating. When you are, we fall into patterns. So we're used to driving to work each morning and fighting rush hour traffic, and then therefore we fall into a pattern of feeling like frustrated and irritated and angry. So when we wake up a little bit earlier and we put on some meditation music, and one of the things you can do is you can set a timer for 5, 8, 10 minutes, and just put on like some nice meditation music, whether it's flute music, or maybe rainforest music, or even if it's just it could just be like a relaxation for 10 minutes. It could be a guided abundance meditation, peace of mind guide. Anyways, so lots of different things. I recommend start small and start for 10 minutes a day, because essentially what you're going to do is you're going to be quieting your mind, you're going to be relaxing, and you're going to kind of like sink into your body and become aware of your breath. And then when you start becoming present, that's the other thing that meditation allows you to do, is it allows us to become present. 99% of the time, people are worrying about something in the past or having anxiety about something in the future, and so little, and like our power is in the present moments where we have all of our power, because that's what we're thinking is what we're creating, what we're talking about is what we're creating, and it's all stemming from right now. So when you're meditating, not only are you present, but you're quieting your mind. And a lot of time what that quieted mind means is that there's no negative self-talk, there's no shaming, there's no regret, there's no like negative analysis of anything, there's no complaint, there's no negativity, because again, 90% of our thoughts are negative. So when we just stop that, and again, when I say stop thought, more I guess essentially what I'm trying to say is like, it's going to be pretty, especially in the beginning, it's going to be impossible to stop your thought. The only way that you're going to truly be able to stop your thought is when you focus on your breath, because you are training your focus to focus on something different other than the thought. But the beautiful thing about meditation is that you recognize when a thought comes in, whatever that thought is. Like it could be like, oh, my dog's walking around because I hear the little clinky sound on the floor. Or it could be like, oh, I've got to go do this, or I've got to go do that. But it's the recognition of that thought is what meditation allows us to essentially accomplish. Because that awareness of like, oh, this thought just came into my mind, okay, I'm going to lovingly release it. Or sometimes when you're meditating, you might get, this could happen the first time you meditate, or it could happen the second, third, 10th, 100th time, I don't know. But eventually you'll start to get, you kind of step into the receiving mode, right? You're opening yourself up to this like divine downloads is what I like to call them. And you just get into the flow state. And sometimes this happens when you're in the shower. Sometimes this happens when you're working out. But essentially, when you're not having negative thoughts, then you can allow yourself to raise your vibration and allow for divine guidance or divine wisdoms, or AKA inspired action. So sometimes you might not even realize, like you could be meditating and like all of a sudden you're just like, let's say you love Tim Hortons hot chocolate. Let's say it's like your favorite thing. You're like, I think I'm going to stop at Tim Hortons and get a hot chocolate. Like, I don't know why, but I just feel like that sounds like such a delightful idea. And so sure enough, and like on your way to work, you take a different route, you go to stop and get the hot chocolate. And then like, who knows, maybe the people there are smiling and friendly and they're like, oh, hey, we're going to give you, we're going to give you a bagel to go with it just because, or maybe it's one of those instances where someone pays for your stuff on the drive-thru. Like I've had that happen before. It's always cool. But then you check your GPS and then you look and like the whole trip, like the way that you normally would have went to work is like backed up with horrible traffic. And because you got the divine inspiration to stop and get your favorite Tim Hortons hot chocolate or Starbucks drink or whatever it might be, you were able to like detour around that traffic and enjoy something special. And while that might seem like insignificant, it's like you stack that day after day, and it's just like God or the universe or whatever you want to call like that power is like, it's always like God's always got your back.
Absolutely.
He's always looking out for you. and you stack all of these small coincidences, but
God.
not coincidences.
It's just God.
Yes, Zach, it's just, I love, Dr. Wayne Dyer always said that coincidence is actually, the root word is a mathematical term from coinciding angles, to coincide. And coinciding angles, that means that they line up perfectly, aka like there was no such thing as a coincidence.
Wow.
But yeah, so essentially when you're meditating, you're quieting your mind, you're becoming present, you are elevating your vibration, because what happens is when you let go of all of these negative thoughts that you're used to thinking, what happens is your vibration is automatically going to rise. We are vibrational beings operating in a vibrational universe. Everything moves, everything vibrates. It's just kind of what it is.
Right.
And so meditation, what it allows you to do is it raises your vibration. So that way, when you are operating on a higher vibration, you have access to things that are going to please and satisfy and delight you. You're going to have access to those things. When you're angry and you're upset and you're frustrated and you're mad and you're miserable, it's kind of like, it can feel like a negative spiral.
Yeah.
Oh my God, how can things get worse? On the flip side, when you remember to meditate every day, that's when things they spiral up and they get better and better and better. And you're saying to yourself, like, oh my God, how can today get any better?
Wow.
And the answer is just keep meditating. Keep getting better.
I love that. So for someone who's like just starting meditating, I know you said start for like 10 minutes, but do you have like, because for me, when I've tried meditating, I try to clear my mind. And for someone like me, I mean, as an entrepreneur, you understand, like your mind is going constantly all the time, never stops. And I know like sometimes people say like meditate on a Bible verse. So like when you're doing something like that and you're thinking of like a specific Bible verse or a specific like kind of mantra, like you said, how do you receive then what God is trying to tell you if you're constantly like meditating on this verse or saying these ums and ahs and like it's just like hard to understand, I guess.
So I would say that the understanding is kind of just like hands in the clay. You just have to like trust the process and just go in and just try it and then stick to it. And one of my favorite meditations, it's called like the Ah meditation. And it's kind of like, if you don't live alone, it can be a little bit intimidating because essentially you can be like sitting or lying in bed, and for 20 minutes you're breathing in, like you're taking the biggest breath in you can, filling up your lungs, and then you're saying ah. And then, so ah, they say, so I've heard, it's the sound of creation. It's the sound of God. So that's why it's like God, Allah, Ra, Krishna, like all of those things have ah in them. So they say ah is the sound of creation. So anytime that you want to create something, you want to manifest something quicker, you do the ah. And so the act, so like just the act of like intense breathing and everything you have, and then ah, like just doing those two things, breathing and ah, you can't think of anything else. Like it's very difficult to think of like, oh, I have to start my car and warm it up so that way the snow melts off of it. Like you're not really thinking about that because you're like ah, you're like trying to get as much ah out before your breath runs out.
Right.
And then I would say that in the large inhale that you're doing, I would say that sometimes, to answer your question about how do you like receive that like divine guidance, it's almost like it like drops into you. It's almost like a thought that you weren't thinking. Like you're just open to receive it and it comes to you and you're like, oh my God, like that was a great idea. I had this